Chapter 6. Beyond the first flutter of surprise, the Martians had shown no interest in the abrupt termination of the year's divinations. They melted away, a trifle more silently perhaps than usual, when I shattered the magic globe. But with their invariable indifference, and having handed the reviving Heru over to some women who led her away, apparently half forgetful of the things that had just happened, I was left alone on the palace steps, not even Anne beside me, and only the shadow of a passer-by now and then to break the solitude, whereon a great loneliness took a hold of me, and, pacing to and fro along the ancient terrace with bent head and folded arms, I bewailed my fate. To and fro I walked, heedless and melancholy, thinking of the old world that was so far, and this near world so distant from me in everything making life worth living, thinking as I strode gloomily here and there how gladly I would exchange these poor puppets and mockery of a town they dwelt in for a sight of my comrades and a corner in the poorest wine-shop salon in New York or Frisco, idly speculating why and how I came here as I sauntered down amongst the glistening shell-like fragments of the shattered globe, and finding no answer. How could I? It was too fair, I thought, standing there in the open. There was a fatal sweetness in the air, a deadly sufficiency in the beauty of everything around, falling on the lax senses like some sleepy draught of pleasure. Not a leaf stirred. The wide purple roof of the sky was unbroken by the healthy promise of a cloud from rim to rim. The splendid country, teeming with its springtime richness, lay in rank perfection everywhere, and just as rank and sleek and passionless were those who owned it. Why, even I, who yesterday was strong, began to come under the spell of it. But yesterday the spirit of the old world was still strong within me, yet how much things were now changing. The well-strung muscles loosening, the heart beating a slower measure, the busy mind drowsing off to listlessness. Was I, too, destined to become like these? Was the red stuff in my veins to be watered down to a pallid Martian sap? Was ambition and hope to desert me, and idleness itself become laborious, while life ran to seed in gilded uselessness? Little did I guess how unnecessary my fears were, or of the incredible fairy tale of adventure into which fate was going to plunge me. Still engrossed the next morning by these thoughts, I decided I would go to Hath. Hath was a man, at least they said so. He might sympathize, even though he could not help, and so, dressing finished, I went down towards the innermost palace, whence for an hour or two had come sounds of unwonted bustle. Asking for the way occasionally from sleepy folk lolling about the corridors, waiting as it seemed for their breakfasts to come to them, and embarrassed by the new daylight, I wandered to and fro in the labyrinths of that stony ant-heap, until I chanced upon a curtained doorway which admitted to a long chamber, high-roofed, ample in proportions, with colonnades on either sides, separated from the main aisle by rows of flowery figures and emblematic scrollwork, meaning I knew not what. Above those pillars ran a gallery with many windows looking out over the ruined city, while at the further end of the chamber stood 3 broad steps leading to a dais. As I entered, the whole place was full of bustling girls, their yellow garments like a bed of flowers in the sunlight trickling through the casements, and all intent on the spreading of a feast on long tables ranging up and down the hall. The morning light streamed in on the white cloths. It glittered on the glass and the gold they were putting on the trestles, and gave resplendent depths of color to the ribboned bands round the pillars. All were so busy, no one noticed me standing in the twilight by the door. But presently, laying a hand on a worker's shoulder, I asked who they banqueted for, and why such unwonted preparation. "It is a marriage feast tonight, stranger, and a marvel. Did you not know it? You too are to be wed." "I'd not heard of it, damsel. A paternal forethought of your government, I suppose. Have you any idea who the lady is?" "How should I know?" she answered laughingly. "That is the secret of the urn. Meanwhile, we have set you a place at the table-head near Princess Heru, And tonight you dip and have your chance like all of them. May luck send you a rosy bride and save her from Arhap, from Arhap. Aye, now I remember. Anne told me of this before. Arhap is the sovereign with whom your people have a little difference, and shares unbidden in the free distribution of brides tonight. This promises to be interesting. Depending on it, I will come. If you keep me a place where I can hear the speeches, and not forget me when this turtle soup goes round, I shall be more than grateful. Now to another matter. I want to get a few minutes with your president, Prince Hath. He concentrates the fluid intelligence of this spear, I am told. Where can I find him? He is drunk in the library, sir. My word, it is early in the day for that, and a singular conjugation of place and circumstance. Where, said the girl, could he safer be? We can always fetch him if we want him, and sunk in blue oblivion, he will not come to harm. A cheerful view, miss, which is worthy of the attention of our reformers. Nevertheless, I will go to him. I have known men tell more truth in that state than in any other. The servitor directed me to the library, and after desolate wanderings up crumbling steps and down mouldering corridors, sunny and lovely in decay, I came to the immense lumber shed of knowledge they had told me of, a city of dead books, a place of dusty cathedral aisles stored with forgotten learning. At a table sat Hath, the purpleless enthroned Hath, the purpleless. At a table sat Hath, the purpleless, enthroned in leather and vellum, snoring in divine content amongst all that wasted labor, and nothing I could do was sufficient to shake him into any semblance of intelligence. So perforce I turned away till he should come to himself, and wandering round the splendid litter of a noble library, presently amongst the ruck of volumes on the floor, amongst those lordly tomes in tattered green and gold and ivory, my eye lit upon a volume propped up curiously on end. And going to it, through the confusion, I saw by the dried fruit rind upon the stick supporting it, that the grave and reverend tone was set to catch a mouse. It was a splendid book when I looked more closely, bound as a king might bind his choicest treasure. The sweet-scented leather on it was no doubt frayed. The golden arabesques upon the cover had long since shed their eyes of inset gems. The jewelled clasp locking its learning up from the vulgar gaze was bent and open. Yet it was a lordly tome, with an odor of sanctity about it, and lifting it with difficulty, I noticed on its cover a red stain of mouse's blood. Those who put it to this quaint use of mouse-trap had already had some sport, but surely never was a mouse crushed before under so much learning. And while I stood guessing at what the book might hold within, Heru, the princess, came tripping in to me, and with her abrupt familiarity of her kind, laid a velvet hand upon my wrist, conning the title over to herself. "What does it say, sweet girl?" I asked. "The matter is learned by its feel." And that maid, pursing her pretty lips, read the title to me, "The Secret of the Gods." "The Secret of the Gods!" I murmured. Was it possible other worlds had struggled hopelessly to come within the barest ken of that great knowledge, while here the same was set to catch a mouse with? I said, "Silver-footed, sit down and read me a passage or two," and propping the mighty volume upon a table, drew a bench before it, and pulled her down beside me. "Oh, a horrid dry old book for certain," cried that lady, her pink fingertips falling as lightly on the musty leaves as almond petals on March dust. "Where shall I begin? It is all equally dull." "Dip in," was my answer. "'Tis no great matter where, but near the beginning. What says the writer of his intention? What sets he out to prove?" "He says that the secret of the first great truth descended straight to him." "Many have said so much, yet have lied." "He says that which is written in his book is through him, but not of him, past criticism and beyond cavil. It is an ancient and crabbed characters going back to the threshold of my learning, but here upon this passage top, where are writ that where they are writ large, I make them out to say, "Only the man who has died many times begins to live." A pregnant passage. Turn another page and try again. I have an inkling of the book already. "'Tis poor silly stuff," said the girl, slipping a hand covertly into my own. "Why will you make me read it? I have a book on Potamus worth twice as much as this." "Nevertheless, dip in again, dear lady. What says the next heading?" And with a little sigh at the heaviness of her task, Heru read out, "Sometimes the gods themselves forget the answers to their own riddles." "Lady, I knew it." All this is still preliminary to the great matter of the book, but the mutterings of the priest who draws back the curtains of the shrine, and here, after the scribe has left these 2 yellow pages blank, as though as to set space of reverence between himself and what comes next, here speaks the truth, the voice, the fact of all life. But, "Oh, Jones," she said, turning from the dusty pages and clasping her young milkworm hands over mine and leaning towards me until her blushing cheek was near to my shoulder and the incense of her breath upon me. "Oh, Gulliver Jones," she said, "make me read no more. My soul revolts from the task. The crazy brown letters swim before my eyes. Is there no learning near at hand that would be pleasanter reading than this silly book of yours?" What, after all," she said, growing bolder at the sound of her own voice, "what, after all, is the musty reticence of the gods to the whispered secret of a maid? Jones, a splendid stranger for whom all men stand aside, and women look over shoulders. Oh, let me be your book," she whispered, slipping onto my knee and winding her arms round my neck till, through the white glimmer of her single vest, I could feel her heart beating against mine. "Newest and dearest of friends, put by this dreary learning and look in my eyes. Is there nothing to be spelt out there?"